I understand that this is a scary stories channel. However, some small details of this story can be disturbing to some. Enjoy the stories. Story number 1. The year was 1985 in the small country of Laos, located in Southeast Asia. It was after the harvest season, so everyone in the village had more time to do other things. One day, 2 of my friends, La and Song, and I decided that we wanted to go hunting. It took 5 hours to walk from our village to the jungle where we would do our hunting. After half a day of walking, we finally reached the dense jungle, far away from the village. Since we were hunting in an odd number, we did not split up into groups, because then one of us would be by himself. Therefore, we stuck together as a group of 3. As we wandered through the jungle, we came to an area with a little stream. La said to Song and me that he needed to go do some business behind the bush, because he had an upset stomach. Song and I stayed there on the edge of the stream, eating some snacks, as Song went farther down and behind a bush to do his business. Once La was done, he came out of the bush and started walking towards Song and me. Song didn't pay any attention since he was still eating, but I turned to look at La, and from afar, he was walking like a drunk man. La appeared unsteady on his feet, and he had this long red tongue hanging down from his mouth. I wasn't sure what I saw because La was a bit farther down still. However, as he got closer and closer, I looked at him again, and it wasn't a long tongue dangling down from his mouth. La was wearing a pointy bamboo hat with a red string tied the hat to his chin, and a part of the red string was dangling side to side as La was walking. I knew that I was just seeing things, so I didn't think much of it. Once La got back, we asked him if he wanted to snack before we continued our hunt, and he said he wasn't hungry yet. We packed our stuff and continued our hunt. We went upstream for a little bit before we spotted a mother deer and her fawn drinking water from the stream. These were the smaller species of deer in the area. We carefully hid behind a bush as Song got his rifle ready. However, the deer and fawn must have heard us or something, because they suddenly ran across the little stream to the other side and took off. All 3 of us got out from behind the bush and started pursuing the mother deer and the fawn. Since we didn't see exactly where the mother deer and the fawn went, we all decided to split up to look for them. After a while, I didn't see any tracks or know where the mother deer and the fawn might have gone. I was tired and decided to rest on a big rock. Nearby was a field of tall grass and bushes. As I rested there for about 10 minutes, I saw the head of a deer walking in the middle of the tall grass. I slowly grabbed my rifle and aimed at the deer's head and pulled the trigger. I realized I had hit my target because I saw the deer fall into the tall grass. I gathered my things and cautiously walked over to the spot. As I approached, I realized that I had shot La. He had already shot and killed the mother deer and strapped it onto his back. He was carrying the deer through the tall grasses, and I mistook its head resting on his shoulder for the deer's actual head, leading me to pull the trigger without taking a closer look. My bullet didn't hit the deer's head but struck La's jaw, causing a portion of it to be missing. His tongue was hanging out, and he was still alive, blinking his eyes. Feeling helpless, I took my knife out and cut the deer off La's back. I held him as he bled heavily, calling for Song and firing a few shots into the sky. Soon, Song found us, but by then, La had already passed away. Song and I didn't know what to do. Song instructed me to stay with La while he ran back to the village to ask for help. As the sun began to set, I knew Song wouldn't get to the village until midnight, and the villagers likely wouldn't arrive until morning. Once Song left, I knew I needed to build a shelter for the night. I cut some banana leaves to cover La, and there were 2 large white rocks nearby. I cut off some branches and constructed a hut where the rocks were. That night, I stayed in the hut, keeping watch over La's body with my rifle ready in case any animals approached. Under the full moon, in the darkness of the open jungle, I observed La begin to move his hand. He eventually grabbed a banana leaf and moved it off of him. Then, he sat up, looking up at the moon. His tongue appeared longer in the dark. Terrified and unsure if he was dead or alive, I remained silent, quietly observing from the hut. After some time, he lay back down and covered himself with the same banana leaf. Witnessing this, I was too scared to sleep for the rest of the night. In the morning, Song and some men from the village arrived, angry and lecturing me. I explained what I had seen the night before. Initially planning to take turns carrying La back to the villagers became fearful upon hearing what happened and decided to bury him on the spot instead. Following the incident, some men from the village and neighboring villages claimed to have seen someone or something with a long tongue in the jungle. Nowadays, people refer to that area as the Long Tongue Jungle, and they've been avoiding it ever since. Story number 2. After the country fell in 1975 and the Americans fled Southeast Asia, I came to the United States shortly after. As a soldier who worked with the Americans, I couldn't stay due to the risk of persecution. During that time, communist soldiers went from village to village looking for Hmong soldiers who had helped the Americans. Sometimes they annihilated and burned down whole villages. It was a difficult time for the Hmong. They had no choice but to flee Laos and migrate to Thailand. Unfortunately, many were killed on the way, including my parents and baby sister. In the late 1980s, when Southeast Asia stabilized, I decided to take a solo trip back to my old country, Laos. We still have many relatives living in that region of the world. When I arrived in the old country, I went to visit my younger brother, but he wasn't home at the time. According to my sister-in-law, my brother had gone to help out at a wedding in another village and wouldn't be back for a few days. Unable to rest at my brother's house in his absence, I went to stay the night at a relative's house. The next day, I wanted to go hunting. I loved hunting in America, but what I really missed was hunting in Laos. Since my brother wouldn't be returning to the village that day, I decided to go hunting alone, as my relatives were busy with the harvest season. I asked my sister-in-law to borrow my brother's hunting rifle, telling her that I would be back by dusk, in case my brother happened to return that day. On my way to the hunting area, I met my father's old friend from a long time ago. We talked for a little bit, and he cautioned me not to go hunting where we used to go, because everything had changed. Restless spirits still wandered the jungle due to the war. I thanked him. And after our conversation, I continued on my way to where my father and I used to hunt. To be honest, I was more afraid of the living than the dead. Upon reaching the jungle where we used to hunt, I found that the landscape had changed quite a bit. It made me miss my parents and baby sister so much that I started whispering their names and silently singing folk songs about them instead of focusing on hunting. I walked around the jungle, reminiscing. While walking around, I was able to kill a few small game and put them in 2 white bags to carry. With all the gear and rifle I was carrying, it was getting heavy, and I noticed the sun beginning to set. As I continued to walk around trying to find my way back, I realized I was lost. Remembering that my brother's village was towards the sunset, I decided to keep going, as once the sun set, I wouldn't be able to find my way. I decided to tie the 2 white bags to a tree, hoping to retrieve them the next day, as they were adding more weight, and I was lost in the jungle. After tying the bags to a tree, I kept walking towards the direction of the sunset. However, I found myself back at the same spot where I had tied the bags. Standing there and not knowing what to do as the sun was setting behind the mountains, I suddenly heard a woman's voice echoing through the jungle from afar, calling and looking for her missing son. Thinking that someone's son had gone missing, I decided to go after the voice and try to find help. I started running towards the voice but had a hard time figuring out where it was coming from. Climbing a tree to get a better view, I saw an old lady holding a little girl's hand and walking towards me. Remaining in the tree as they approached, the old lady said, "Son, you're up there? Your father and I miss you so much. If it's you up there, then come back down. I'll take you to see your father." Though the old lady bore some resemblance to my mother, I knew my parents were long dead. Clinging to the tree branch, I refused to go down. Then, the old lady, in a raspy voice, threatened to climb up after me. Terrified, I took the hunting rifle off my back and pointed it at her, saying, "If you're my real mother, don't do that to me. If you climb the tree, I'm going to shoot." The old lady started laughing, blood gushing from her neck, and said, "You don't miss me?" Frightened, I shot at them a few times. Mong old hunting rifle creates a lot of white smoke when fired, but once the smoke cleared, I saw that the old lady and the little girl were gone. Too scared to go back down, and with night falling and the full moon shining, I decided to stay up in the tree until morning. The jungle was full of bugs, and I occasionally felt them crawling on me. Suddenly, I felt something crawling on my shoulder. Slapping at it, I realized it was leaves. Turning back, I saw the old lady on another tree branch behind me, smiling and poking me with a small stick with leaves. Scared, I jumped down to the branch below me and then jumped down to the jungle's floor. Once I got back up to my feet, I started running as fast as I could, and turning back to look a few times, just in case she's chasing after me. With the full moon, I got out into an open area where I could see a little better. I can hear that she's running after me. However, when I looked back, all I saw was two legs walking towards me, but I did not see her body or her head. I looked up at the tree branches and saw the old lady's head floating and looking at me. I continued to run, falling and sliding down to lower ground. I lifted my head up to look, and standing in front of me was the little girl from earlier. I quickly got up and continued to run as the girl was just standing there like a statue with her head down. I can still hear the old lady chasing after me. I take the rifle off of my back and blindly shooting behind me a few times. I kept running until I'm out of the jungle and found myself on a dirt path that the villagers use. It was a full moon, and I'm high up in the mountains so I can see my surroundings well. My heart was pounding as I sped walk the dirt path and tried to find a nearby Hmong village. Then I started hearing voices silently calling for help. The tall grass and bushes on both sides of the dirt path are starting to move and shake. I looked around and saw many people there on the ground, moaning in pain and silently calling for help. I thought to myself that these must be the ghosts of the people who were killed during the war. I kept running until I come to a bigger and more open dirt path, and I noticed a man and his teenage son walking towards me from my right. I ran over to them and asked to be with them because I was so scared. They asked me what happened, and I said that I went hunting, got lost, and something was chasing me. The man and his son told me not to go over there because many people were killed in that area during the war. Even the villagers don't go there anymore. That's why the dirt path was so narrow. I asked them where they were going, and could I go with them, but they said they were going to the farm, and the village was just down the road. They gave me direction to the village, and after that, we went our separate way. When I got back in the village, it was already dawn. The next day, my brother came back home, and I told him my experience and encounter. He warned me that there's a lot of animals in that area where I was hunting, but never went alone or camp overnight, due to restless spirits that still roamed the jungle. After that experience, I came back to the United States and haven't gone back to Laos since. That's all for this video. Thank you for making all the way through and supporting my stories. Have a wonderful day or night.